Okay. Hello, everyone. This briefing or this episode is being presented on certain topic. For those who will be hearing it in the future, you won't believe what's happening. For this episode, I was wondering about the epitome of the psychological maturity of a human species, and in some sense, how that links to the idea of the advanced civilization. It points to something advanced, but at the same time, in the subtitle, I've written where is the mind going? And so some part of me thought it could speak about this stuff tonight. I would like to begin by saying when, as a human being, in 2000, I seek advancement, I am suggesting that there is something close to a perfection. There is an opportunity for something advanced to happen. And you know, the reason I chose the name Mr.Within, I guess it is to say that I'm just a participant in the event of human existence. And say it this way, that you're listening to the living account of a real human being in 2023. You see the question, where's the mind going? Who has a mind will at some point wonder about it. Do you know people wonder about what they're doing tomorrow? But you know, we don't think about what will happen in tomorrow. So to follow up the question, where is the mind? It's like we're entering a tunnel. Excuse me, where's the mind going? To answer that question, to wonder about that, it's like to enter a sort of context of reality unique to the properties of the mind. For now, you know, it's kind of like, okay, there's stuff here in space, and there's stuff here for a long time, and after all this massive brewing process of evolution, there has come a biological organism where, upon sound function of its organs, has the capacity of a psychological translation of reality. So it's like we're trying to wonder about what did the physics lead up to, and the physics, it was as if all the experiences of an object suddenly came to a point of subjective meaning. Can you imagine that? Can you imagine, like, you know, they say in wilderness there's like dynamics between creatures, for example, alpha creatures and beta creatures and delta creatures, or whatever the you know, the class system is. And so does it imagine the survival of the fittest, the survival of the strongest. Imagine there came a moment in history where the success of the species was not dependent on outer strength alone, on outer position, on the outer position of reality. So I want to read something for the viewers that I found online. And I find this to be important to share. Because really this episode is not just only about the mind, it's kind of like where our minds have reached, and in some sense what is the future of the psychological maturity of a species in the void, journeying on a rocket towards, like in the space-time continuum. So this is important to wonder about. You know, many people say ignore the deep questions about life, but I believe that it's like if you're not asking the deep questions on reality, it's as if you're not attempting to take responsibility for the totality of your existence, right? Because the totality of the existence of the individual actually is the success and efficiency of the collective, right? This is something that people need to learn on a global level. I was talking about this with someone actually. I was saying that you look at most people, it's as if their self is important. So it's as if most human beings are being responsible for their self. Upon being responsible for themselves, they're being responsible for others. Let's say, their partner. And after that, they're becoming responsible for their community. Then they're becoming responsible for their nation. Now imagine what is superior to national responsibility. That means imagine all those people, in different countries where they're like, I'm going to fight for this country. Right? Sure, I get that. I understand passion, you know. Usually passion is synonymous with the fighter's spirit. But it's as if we haven't reached that point as a species. We're like, wait a minute, before land can define us, before people can define us, before situations can define us. It's like what we can envision as a possibility can also define us. And that's what's necessary. You see, it's as if the past was miserable, it's like, what are we gonna do about it? Right? Are we gonna build a time machine and go completely change the past into the perfect time? All right. to continue. You see, my fascination, you know something, this is the strategy as one human being on a planet of 8 billion human beings. This is what I'm using, this is what I'm doing. And I'm looking at reality and I ask myself this question: where is the value? In most moments in my life, success seems to be just knowing where the value is. It's as if something suddenly in life becomes important and in your attendance you become it. So what I'm saying is that human beings right now, we all recognize there has been the psychological maturity of realizing, all right, the cosmos is huge. We're on a pebble in a light beam. We're fighting over like, you know, chunks of this pebble on a light beam, not realizing that as technology advances, the problems that nations were fighting over also dissolves. You know, people think just the advancement of technology is a bad thing. In reality, the advancement of technology is normal. It's been happening from the beginning of time. But what the issue is the morality and the sort of ethical system that human beings live by. But that ethical system is really dependent on the maturity of the human being. Because really, you can know what's ethical but not do it, and then wonder, like, what was the problem, right? So there is that as well. So, in the curiosity, in the wondering of the psychological maturity of the human species, I want to read for you something I found online, right, of different systems. Pretty much, I asked ChatGPT, right, about like different systems of psychological maturity. It's a very complex topic, but at the same time, you know, and it's multifaceted. That means there's many ways you can look at it. But I'm going to share some systems, some popular systems of psychological maturity, levels of psychological maturity, or stages and phases people have seen. And I think this is interesting because then we get a sense of like, okay, what is roots, what ideas are rooted, and from what sort of branches we can fly. From what sort of branches of knowledge can we fly, you know? Piaget's stages of cognitive development. So from 0 to 2 years old, sensory motor stage. Infants develop basic sensory motor skills and object permanence. From 2 to 7 years old, pre-operational stage. Children develop language and symbolic thinking but may lack logical reasoning. So this is up to the age of 7. Now, from the years from 7 to 11, from the ages of 7 to 11, concrete operational stage. Logical thinking develops, but it is limited to concrete situations. From 11 years over, formal operational stage. Abstract thinking and hypothetical reasoning emerge. See, hypothetical reasoning, like the human mind can become multi-leveled very early, but the idea is it doesn't want the multiple levels when it's young. You know, it's kind of like there's many food you can eat, but you can only eat one, so the consciousness is kind of going one by one when it comes to experience, right? So just the way, let me see if I was to like learn this right now, it would be something like, okay, so from 0 to 2, basic sensory motor skills. So the child is learning how to move its limbs and kind of moving in object permanence. It's realizing it object. The pre-operational stage, the child is developing language and symbolic thinking, but may lack logical reasoning. This is like the parents calling the child's name. Okay. So first you learned basic sensory motor skills and you realized you're an object. Then you developed language and symbolic thinking. But you're still lacking a logical reasoning. This is up to the age of seven. And then from the age of 7 up, the concrete operational state, logical thinking develops, but it is limited to concrete situations. That means there's emotional reactions of youth are like still present alongside logical thinking, which is another way of saying rather than reacting or getting bewildered by a situation, take a step back, look at the geometry, the design of the moment, and then upon internally viewing the moment from various angles and concluding, then move on. So sensory motor, pre-operational, concrete operational, formal operational. So it's all just getting to the level of like operating. The cognitive development is reaching an operational level by the age of 11. So whoever you are, according to Piaget, if your child is not capable of abstract thinking and hypothetical reasoning, right? By the age of 11, your child is still dealing with the levels beneath, right? But the idea in an advanced civilization is simply this, that the most advanced outcome deserves to happen. That the most advanced outcome is a blessing. It is the greatest victory. The victories are not on physical anymore. It's the psychological maturity and advancement and efficiency of a species journeying in the space-time continuum. Whoever you are, just hear this at least. So next we go on to Erickson's psychological stages. This is some other dude. Trust versus mistrust. This is from saying, so memory is a clue that there is an accumulation of a different translation of sensory perception in the moment. That means, sure, be an atheist as much as you want, be a materialist as much as you want. But when you close your eyes and remember what you ate yesterday, that's not material, bro. Do you know that's not a materialistic incident? That's a psychological activity, which is as bizarre as being like matter found a way to project itself upon itself in such a sophisticated manner that it began to realize it's not just matter. Do you see? It's like an object is subjectively, is through a subjective dimension of meaning being an object, and we're like, yo, there's no way that's just an object. Do you see? So the world has suddenly awakened to what the ancients hoped that we'd never forget. And that not that there's only many ways to look at the world because there's many eyes in the world. It's also that it's like the world is not just like a double-edged sword, it's multiple-edged. Do you see? Like when I see a human being, sure, on some level, I have to hypnotize myself into the romance of the normal humanity. Do you understand? It's as if like, imagine it's like the famous story, right? This was something that my mind had simulated in one of the talks I was giving. And what it was the story of this massive slaughter of white sheep, and there was this one black sheep going the opposite direction of everybody. And all the sheep that were going to the slaughterhouse that they thought was their best outcome right? Suddenly we're like, yo, look at this black sheep, you know, going against, you know, all the other normality of the system, right? And not realizing that maybe that black sheep has seen something. Maybe the fall for an advanced civilization is due to the reaction of a very sharpened and accurate view on what's going on and what we're missing out on. Do you understand? It's like the human species. Granted, we didn't evolve from lions, but the roar of the soul occurs when the mind realizes what it truly deserves. But your mind is not just your mind. It is present in an interconnectivity of worldhood. That means in the dance of a self in a world. The self wondered what the world is. And in the curiosity to know what the world is, it realized what it always was. You see, the situation, the human position is a strange game. Whether it's an elemental game, whether it's an ideological game, whether it's a mysterious game, it is a strange game. It's a strange world. What's normal here? Somebody tell me, what is normal of a rock spinning in the middle of a massive nowhere? But that nowhere is not nowhere because there's intelligence activity behaving as if what I'm trying to say is like, imagine a being is beyond time, but this being beyond time has the ability to remember the ancient energy and has an ability to use the ancient energy to be new energy. You see what it is? It's kind of like this bizarre thing where to try to pass the world on to the future generations requires one hand gripping the ropes of the past and the other hand gripping the ropes of the future. Do you understand? And in the middle you realize you are the bridge between the worlds of how in different memories you were different selves. You see, we're no longer at this phase like, yo, bro, you know, yo, human being, just go sit in nature, meditate, be calm, gentle, attain inner peace. That's it. That's all you need to do. No way that's all you need to do. You see, there is a savageness in this world. And how this savageness becomes organized suggests how soon, how long, you know, the human species is a tenant on Earth. You know, passion is expressed out of the individual when what is more important than the self appears. You see, when I ask myself as a human being, okay, I'm alive in this world with what sort of energy, with what sort of vision, inspirations, a psychological standard of an honor system do I function in this reality? You see? Honor was kind of like how you maintained your essence in a world that was changing all the time. You know, sometimes I feel like consciousness has one foot in matter and the other foot beyond matter. I'll continue with the psychosocial stages. I don't know why I was saying psychological. Anyways, whatever. I mean, psychosocial means there's a social dimension to the context. Erickson's psychosocial stages. So first year, I read this: trust versus mistrust, developing a sense of trust in the world. From the age 1 to 3. So in the development of a human being from the age 1 to 3, Erickson says, autonomy versus shame and doubt. Developing a sense of independence. And then we go to ages 3 to 6, initiative versus guilt. Developing a sense of purpose and initiative. Industry versus, from ages 6 to 12, industry versus inferiority, developing competence and skills. Then we go from ages 12 to 18, identity versus role confusion, forming a coherent sense of self. So Erickson's like, yo, this child is born. The first level the child needs to go through is trust versus mistrust. Does this human being that has been born in the world trust their world? So the human being by the age one has to develop a sense of this. This could be like how the child hugs like the parents. Then we go autonomy from ages 1 to 3, autonomy versus shame and doubt. So by the age of 3, you're getting a taste of like being an individual entity moving around, but also the wrong. You're getting introduced to morality. What is right? What is wrong? Do you know? It's as if doing a wrong thing, doing a wrong thing at the wrong time. Oh my God! You just access a level called shame. Do you know what I mean? Doing the right thing at the wrong time, still you'll experience a level of like guilt, but guilt of yourself upon yourself. you know, like there's been moments where I've looked at people and I'm like, look at that. Excuse my language, but I've looked at some people and I'm like, yo, that guy's being a piece of shit. But and there's been moments where I've looked at my own self and I've looked down on myself. A human being has an ability to look down and to look up, right? Human beings, like, think of it this way. Let's say a healthy human being is being suggested to be a human being that is functional, operational. So you don't want to just exist here, right? You want to live here, which means you have to manage the operations of your own existential activity. So when it comes to the operation of the human being, there was a level of trust and mistrust. Then there's a level of autonomy versus shame and doubt, right? That means like a sense of responsibility. And then initiative versus guilt. That means feeling just ashamed, or doing something about the shame. So this is something that is important. It seems that parents required to teach the child, all right, you feel bad, do something about it. You know? The next one, industry versus inferiority, developing competence and skills. This is like the parent being like, son, play piano in front of the guests, in front of our house guests. The 12-year-old kid goes and plays a piano piece, and then it's a sense of like expression of familiarity. 6 to 12 is probably the most important ages to teach children the most complex ideas. That means the teachers of educational systems 6 to 12 years old should in some sense be the most advanced human beings and get paid the most out of all the teachers, because how crucial the eyes of the child is. So developing a sense of trust in the world, developing a sense of independence, developing a sense of purpose and initiative, developing competence and skills, forming a coherent sense of self, all of this checklist of Erickson's psychosocial stages has to be check marked by the age 18. So by the age of 18, if you're someone who's above the age of 18, it could be possible that the situations in life dehumanize a person. And when a person dehumanizes, they stop caring for their human psychological development, let's say. Do you know? That means the world can be so cruel to stop progress, even be heartless, but it is foolish, because by stopping progress, you stopped what could have been more advanced for yourself. You see, our greatest victories are not in the past. There are those to come, but they are collective ones. So the era of collective victory will arise. The era of identifying as a advanced, graceful, benevolent human being on earth. Like, that should be the standard. And then the rest are like, okay, you guys want chaos? Have your own sector. Do you see? So what I'm waiting to see happen is really all the borders, like icebergs, like walls of ice, to begin melting. Once nationalism dissolves like Alka-Seltzer tablets, do you know? Imagine all the nations were dropped into the same jar of liquid, right? Then what you're left with is the sophistication of an international entity. Do you understand? That means the reason people look at war happening in 2023 on the news and are horrified, you know why you're horrified? Because we're a step behind. That means somebody, in the global communication of reality, that means, like, I don't know who you'll point fingers to, but it doesn't matter because we're all on the same ship. It's, imagine a ship is sinking, right? There's 8 billion people on this ship, right? And people are fighting over whose fault was it that there's a ship, there's a hole on the ship, and there's some wise people on the ship being like, yo, why are you guys fighting over whose fault it was? Seal the damn hole of the ship so the totality of humanity is not crushed by just the ignorance of the small. You see, like, the majority vote is necessary when there is chaos, right? Sometimes I look at democracy and I feel like it's a system not just alive on its own, but as a reaction to what was there before it. You see? So this was Erickson's psychological stages. Now we go to Kohlberg's stages of moral development. So up to adolescence, pre-conventional level, morality is based on the obedience and punishment, is based on obedience and punishment or self-interest. And then it says adolescence to adulthood. Conventional level. Morality is based on conformity to social norms and authority. Like, isn't that hilarious, right? So you're an adult when you can be in the same membership program as all those who've already had no choice and were already inside the membership program, which this might sound bizarre, but when I started to look at history as programs, it became way more fascinating. That means, at what point did an elemental program begin, a chemical program begin? Do you see, for example, a biological program begin? Do you know at what point did intelligence have a plan and a model, a vision for what to do? Do you see Michelangelo, the sculptor, said, they asked this guy, like, how do you sculpt, bro? Like, this guy would sculpt next level things out of stone, right? And he said, he gave people a clue, and he's like, I saw the angel in the stone, and I set it free, man. Right? So Michelangelo's like, I saw the perfect statue in this chunk of rock, and I just took what was unnecessary away, and the masterpiece was revealed, as if it was already there. It was just discovered by those who bring it. Okay, so morality is based on conformity to social norms and authority. This is adolescence to adulthood. Then we go to post-conventional level. Morality is based on so this is adulthood, right? You've climbed, you've gotten over the wall of, adolescence. And so adulthood morality is based on universal ethical principles and individual conscience. This means that you, as a human being, when it comes to your sense of right and wrong, you become a full human being, right? Where you have a universal ethical principle. What this means is your standard for not just your house, not just your car, not just, let's say, your clothing. Do you see what I'm saying? For what type of planet and civilization you're in? This is when the songs of the advanced civilization start being heard by all those children who realize in the future like, we must plant the seeds of the future's greatness now. So what it means is that you're not being pushed around, right, by a system, yet you're consciously walking in the system. And as an event occurs, you observe the event, and regardless of psychological reaction, try to find clarity in the haze of let's say, psychological shifts. What I mean by psychological shifts, that means your psychology changes when you're walking in the mall and you enter one store and you see all their products, and you have a type of psychology to the moment in that, and then you go to another store and then your psychology changes. It's really what's influencing your attention, because where your attention is, your life force is being directed. It's like, who knew what you look at becomes you? And so what is the greatest thing to become? The Mr. Withinian approach is just that the advanced is the best. And the advanced doesn't mean just advanced in one level. That means an advanced human being is not just physically advanced. It's not just mentally, psychologically advanced. But they're also advanced in their character, in their moral value, with what sort of grace do they open their eyes to the world. Because I could tell you that the whole point of evil is that once you develop unpleasant eyes, you're stuck in an unpleasant realm. How you feel suggests what you see means, you know. It's like your emotions are the sieves that sensory information, you know, is decided on, something like that. So Kohlberg's stages of moral development, he's pretty much like, yo, look at this child, you know, it's stuck in self-interest and act like, imagine you're a child, like a video game character. You're like, okay, I got 3 moves, you know, obedience, you know, and that's one mode, punishment, or then in some sense just self-interest. Right, so that's what I'm saying, right? This is something bizarre, something that I personally found fascinating. I mean, I this episode I'm just focusing on talking about the advanced civilization and not metaphysics. But I would say something in the lines of like, there is something beautiful of like, imagine a person discovering a piano for the first time. Imagine someone who was going to become the greatest piano player who ever lived. Imagine the first time they heard someone play a piano, and then they touched the piano and started to realize that different keys have to activate different perceptions. So guys, one more thing to read here, and this is something I've spoken a lot about, Maslow's hierarchy of needs. So first there's physiological needs, right? So let's take a castaway situation where imagine someone stranded on an island. All right, find shelter, so basic survival, right? Then safety needs, like, you know, build a weapon, or like build like a base or something, right? And then imagine you have belongingness and love. So after you're there alone in the island, imagine you find, like, you know, there's, you know, the most beautiful, you know, love of your life is also there on the island or something. You know, so that's like the belongingness and love needs, right, of the human. Then you go to esteem needs, self-esteem and recognition. Why do human beings need self-esteem and recognition? Well, a good way to approach this is to be like, yo, if human beings were immortal, would they seek fame? Would it be important if we didn't die? Like if imagine 8 billion human beings never died and it was just added. There was no subtraction. It would be as if there's nothing to really be famous for. That means imagine an immortal being, an immortal podcaster, right? And the immortal podcaster is like, yo, it's like, I'm gonna be around till the end of time as long as the internet is alive, right? So it's one of those situations where if you looked at life as an immortal, you would completely understand mortality. So because we're mortal, we have this feeling of, yo, I gotta pass something on to the future generations before I stop existing. But what would that be? You see, more important than just participating in an event is starting one. So after esteem needs, like let's say you're someone who survived, you had security and stability, you were safe, and then you had social relationships, you weren't alone, and then you had self-esteem and recognition, you were recognized for your efforts, so you had a legacy, right? Then you reach self-actualization, fulfilling one's potential. Okay, maybe I jumped too far. Right, so the idea is like, all right, the esteem needs is like, okay, I'm good. what I was saying before for esteem needs actually fits into self-actualization. Esteem needs is pretty much the person's like, yo, I'm a human being here. You know, acknowledge me. You know, like that's the esteem need. The self-esteem. You know, what does that mean? That means it's like the system is turbulent because the pilot is piloting in the sky alone. You know. So these are just common views, and by these views, we see that the advanced human being, at least in Kohlberg's stages of moral development, he says morality is based on universal ethical principles and individual conscience. So, to continue, I am not a perfect person, but sometimes being imperfect allows you to notice future perfection. And I ask myself this question. Okay, what is the starting point? A conscious human being, a member of a species. That means there was something happening in nature and I opened my eyes and I was a part of it. Now I ask myself, as an independent energy unit, as a force, you know, sometimes I like to see the soul, like, you know, when Yoda, when there was that scene, I don't know, I'm not a huge Star Wars fan, but I do, but I, no, I mean, I am a fan of it, but I see a different, because I see a different kind of future. Yeah, it's kind of like, you know, Star Wars is its own thing. But anyways, what I'm saying is, in Star Wars, there was this scene where you know, like the bad guy or something looks at like, you know, the main character and is like, after the main character's like, I don't know, like destroyed like 20 drones or something, do you know? And then the bad guy's like, yo, the force is strong in this one, meaning not that that guy has a lot of energy, but it means that there is a destiny. That means when they say the force is strong in the narrative of Star Wars, right, that those characters are being so conscious of the force in nature where they are seeing a transcendental level to reality. You see, that's really where it's going to go. If you're a materialist, cyberspace is going to become your spirituality. Trust me, you know, and you might not believe it now, but your grandchildren may. They may, you know, I even envisioned it kind of like something being like a tattoo addiction, right? So the person gets one tattoo and they're like another, and eventually their whole body's filled with tattoos, right? So now imagine in the far future, this happens, but through the emergence of some sort of technological movement and advancement in technology. That means imagine we reach a point where biological organs can be replaced for incredibly efficient, like mechanical ones, right? We will reach that point where we're like, whoa, a natural evolution is slowly becoming unnatural, but consciousness is still continuing. So what is the approach here? What is the strategy of at the moment 8 billion temporary biological creatures roaming a mysterious land, right? Like some people are like, yo, I don't like fiction. You know, I don't like fantasy novels. And at the same time, you know, you don't realize, you know, you don't need fantasy to see the world as a fantasy. You know, just go see the context, just go see the story, just go hear in history how many different human beings. I mean, honestly, what is philosophy? Philosophy is sometimes not about just, yo, I'm a philosopher, yo. You know, it's not like that. Sometimes it's about like, yo, look how the evolution of human behavior has taken place. Look at how human beings were living at a time where they were like, only my victory. Then they reached a point where they were like, our victory. And then they reached a point where they're like, yo, this giant chunk of land's victory. And now everybody's waiting. Everybody, you know what's fascinating? There is an event occurring right now in 2023 where there has been a relatively peaceful compared to the savage nature of the past, right? Like, I'm not talking about how in World War II, like, what was the number? Like, I think 85 million people vanished. Do you understand what that means? right? And right now, the world, there's wars going on, and everybody on the planet's like, yo, man, we're too busy on our technology and iPhones and watching Netflix to be like, yo, there's a war. Like, how do we behave towards it? It's as if civilization through modernity's uh, a slightly misguided view on what really see, human beings are like birds, that when you're actually expressing energy, you're like flying. You haven't landed on a branch, but at some point you need to land on a branch, and that branch becomes like, what is your furthest view of the world? How deeply have your eyes contacted this place you call home? And have you seen that which is beyond sight? Because the ancients would speak about it, under the stars, as if there was if human beings were not alone. What was maintaining the expression of the whole event of existence was a collective force. It's as if it's like, imagine my red blood cells. Imagine there's a person, right? And this person's red blood cells suddenly became conscious, suddenly had personality, suddenly started having explorers, mathematicians, and different categories. And but they were still red blood cells in a blood bank, right? And so imagine these red blood cells, they have no clue, right? That their existence is necessary because it is leading to the presence, the healthy presence of that which is everything. Do you understand? How we live is not just like what I think sometimes karma was misunderstood, right? And what that means is karma is not like just cause and effect. Karma was just the revelation. And what revelations means, there's different kinds. Religious revelation, it is such a deep culture. Like for me, like right now, the view I have on religion is, it's like, imagine, imagine religion. Imagine if all the events on history were like codes on a computer screen. Religions are codes that have outlasted the constant refreshing of the code, meaning that they are destined for a far future. Do you see? And it's really the interactions of intelligence, right? So that means, imagine you're someone who you have no interest in metaphysics, in the divine, in spirituality, but you had an interest in being like, what types of intelligence are there in reality? And you reach this point where you see the different types of intelligence. Some have to do with the observer, some have to do with the observed. And whoever you are, if you can discriminate with, if you can suddenly somehow, I don't know how, maybe this podcast can help, but but what I'm saying is, like, somehow, if you have a moment of insight where you're like, wait a minute, who is watching my thoughts? Who is watching the internal cinema of having thoughts prior to speech? And you realize what you are is kind of like a double-edged entity. You know what that means? That means from one angle, you're your whole moment of conscious presence. From another angle, you're what you can move in that moment of conscious presence. All right. To continue, I'm just going to bring it to this idea of the psychological maturity of the human species. And where is the mind ending up? And really, everybody could be like, who are you to say this? And I'll be like, okay, I'm a human biological organism, and I have access to a range of perception. And I have noticed for a long time now what in the day repeats and what doesn't, and where is the empty space where upon our entrance worlds await. What if there's a way that we could all be existing and living as human beings right now that surpasses anything we know? It just requires, enough cooperation of a species to notice that its strength is in its great outcome. In an advanced civilization, now we're getting to the good stuff. In an advanced civilization, I want you to do, whoever you are listening, just wonder about, okay, what kind of human beings or end beings will the most advanced civilization have? So right now, whoever you are, you could be like, yo, Mr. Within, just stuck in this part of the world, I'm in that part of the world, I don't know what to do, and I'll be like, yo, that's fine. That's the cards you were dealt. But the idea is, what are you seeing beyond your cards? That means what is waiting for you that you don't know yet. So when it comes to the psychological maturity of a species, we're talking about what kind of decisions will 8 billion human beings make based on the type of way they interpret reality. And normality is kind of like, yo, choose a side. You're either in or you're out. You know? And the cost is when you're out, loneliness. You know why? Because your mind is shaping in accordance to your mind. You see, it's very different of someone, let's say, working in an environment where imagine people are cruel in that workplace. And imagine a person works in an environment, for 1 year in a place that is the most kindest, benevolent, most advanced, enlightened people, right? Those two people, after those years, will have completely different views on human nature. Life is so funny because what really the self-discovery is the expositions of our true nature. We reveal what we were hiding because we're tired of hiding. That means a moment comes where one has to choose who the crown of the greatest value in reality belongs to, right? And adulthood, as Kohlberg I think was saying, you reach a sort of point where you have a high advanced ethical standard. That's what I'm like, teach the kids, the future generations this, that there is an advanced honor waiting for any human being that in some sense flies beyond the clouds of nationalism. That means, dear humanity, behave like humanity. This means the initial stopping of inefficient and unnecessary destruction. Imagine there was a law. Imagine everybody on the planet's like, yo, that's a good law. That we stop unnecessary destruction of the DNA that has tried to surpass so much. 4.5 billion years of evolution means, yo, this film has been playing this long biologically. Do you believe that? Like right now, sure, I've been alive as a biological organism for 31 years on this planet. But the biology and DNA has been a 4.5 billion, oh my God, how about my ancestors either were destined or lucky to somehow get me a platform. That means my first microphone was how my consciousness awakened to my biological existence. And you see, there's something very fascinating because the mind is an instantaneous place. The mind is of course people have different minds, different ways that their attention has opened up to reality. There is no one answer for collective event. I'm just saying that I was thinking that imagine you right now envisioned what the most advanced version of you and what the most advanced civilization, the most advanced version of you could exist in, and you for a second wondered how that would be. You see, all I can say, there was a time I'm like, yo, am I in a position to preach some sort of truth? And I'm like, yo, what is that? You know? Right now I've reached the point where I'm like, no, I saw a vision of how advanced the future can be, and the most important thing in my life has become to just communicate that. But due to a sort of change of faith and due to a faithful return, I kind of went on YouTube. I created a new membership, right? And I went and found the lowest tier, and the lowest tier was $0.99, right? And the idea was to, in some sense, for some time, keep these talks in private, at least the new ones. Okay, this music is unnecessarily.
Look at them little
It's like the poetry of a sorrow of a different world,
Look at them little frogs all in a row.
Okay, I think I know.
Help!
There are moments where I'm like, okay, I'm just some guy trying to do something. And then there's moments where I wonder, what if it's a historic moment? What if when I am conscious of my own self, I get to see someone that had never existed until now? You see, there's a fascination there, whoever you are. And then the question, why the idea of an advanced civilization somehow has to come to the human psyche, right? It's simply because, like, what is the standard? Like, what do human beings really deserve? Do they deserve, like, confusion, chaos, unnecessary war, unnecessary poverty? Or does it require enough of a group of smart people to be like, yo, let's update this? To update your world means to be in the frontiers of novelty. There's an outer war, which was kind of like the trenches of World War II, being in those kind of frontiers. And then there's a sort of, it's like being at the frontiers of novelty means that you have become bored of what you have seen here. And through that boredom, there is the authenticity to see something new. That means anyone who's bored, you're actually in the greatest state to learn something advanced. So in an advanced civilization, like, let's say somehow through some sort of like advanced spaceship that was also a time machine, and I don't know, it could go anywhere. Let's say through some sort of vehicle, we managed to go to an advanced civilization on a different planet in the solar system, or in a different galaxy, and they were an advanced civilization. Imagine somehow, a group of human beings piloted towards the Andromeda galaxy, and midway in trying to attempt to go to the Andromeda galaxy, they were in some sense picked up by, let's say, an advanced Andromedan mothership. They're like, yo guys, relax, we'll take you to our galaxy, And so imagine we get to see an advanced civilization in the Andromedan galaxy, and we realize the true wit, the true high IQ move of the species was how much it chose gentleness over savageness. Why? Because in gentleness, there's patience. In patience, there's an ability to see what else. And that's a freedom. That's really freedom. if you can see something else. It's like, yo, you want to get enlightened? Yeah? Okay, see something else. Just look somewhere else. We have a heart that beats. And we are a sort of like, you know, kind of we have something in common with Jedis. And what we have in common with Jedis is like, just like how every Jedi had its like own color of a lightsaber or something. Not every, but you know, it's like every human being that is awake in the conscious waking state, that is your like that is your lightsaber. Concentration is the lightsaber of our times, you know. How well do you wield your attention in reality? And really it goes back to your values. So it's like what you value. I'm like, okay, I'm on a, like, see, it's not just what you value, but how you tell the story of life to yourself. Alright guys, until I get this going again. I'm pretty much trying to point the attention of human beings to the best outcome. Now, I'm not saying I know what the best outcome is, but I'm like, okay, there's definitely right now way, like there could definitely be advanced civilizations right now. So if those, okay, I kind of, okay, here, I'll pull the moment like this. I'll weave the moment like this. Going back to the Andromedan galaxy, visited to that advanced civilization, wondering how advanced those beings are. Through the acceptance of an advanced nature from the beginning, they have not had the necessity to go through the turmoils of like, you know, savage moral update. So what I'm trying to say is that how attention moved on this planet suggests what it got. That's really it. Okay, there we go. For some reason, viewers saw Rupert Sheldrake. You know, check him out. I think he's written interesting things, this guy. But anyways. Alright guys, I really need to land the airplane here. I'm going to say this. Where the mind is going is towards the discovery of its true nature, of its essence. So it's as if before we have a strategy towards life's meaning, before we have a strategy for what life means, it's as if we need to wonder about where life is. What is it? Right? Like how much of life is going to be just a biological human being dressed up in clothing, you know, behaving through a sort of psychological, you know, pattern recognition? Or is this going to update towards something that is beyond what we can imagine now, and that's when we know we've had a good future? When I hear the idea of the advancement of humanity, I think about what is the most advanced mind. And the answer is it might startle you, but it's a hilarious answer. That the most advanced next step of the mind is after it has just experienced being one point of consciousness, it experiences a sort of multi-locality. After it has experienced multi-locality, it experiences becoming the world. You know, there's a huge chance that, you know, scientists say what happened to evolution? Is there like a threshold and civilizations can't surpass that threshold, and is that why we're alone? No. It's not just a threshold. There's something, I created a term even, I called it going beyond the language threshold, advancing beyond the language threshold. What this means is that beyond individual consciousness, and imagine you experience your own body, then imagine you experience multiple bodies, like one consciousness being in multiple bodies, and then you experience your consciousness being moments, like chunks of space, imagine. And then imagine you experience your consciousness becoming the presence of reality itself. What that means is the truth behind our eyes is actually the realization of the singularity of how everything is happening at once, regardless of our categories. So what it is that it's a conscious evolution through a biological organism towards the true. Think of it this way: we're trying to become not just the universe, but to remember we are the living universe. You see that level of, we're not that advanced yet as a species. Like, I'm just saying, for now, let's have a sort of like focus on the human species as the common denominator. All right, biological organisms that are conscious, that can update, that can see something